Hello, hi. We will continue our lecture about the muscle. Um, and let me share my slides. One second. Share. All right. So this is where we left. We now already know the uh, the microscopic structure. We know the macroscopic structure of the muscle down to the microscopic structure of the muscle. So we know that muscle has thin filament, thick filament, and because thick filaments interact with the thin filaments, resulting a sliding filament along with these thick filaments, and then we can have the muscle contraction. So, so that's that. What I am going to talk about today is these processes require energy. So the energy currency in a cell is ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So that's what we need to know. All right. So here is that. So ATP is one produced from mitochondria, and we know that cell has the mitochondria, and it produces a lot of ATP. When the muscle is resting, this ATP is going to get stored, and some of those will get stored as the creatine phosphate. When muscle need to use the ATP, muscle will immediately use a lot of this ATP, the original ATP, to do the contraction, to do this sliding filament uh, process. This one require force to pull it together. So this one require energy. But the ATP amount is very limited. So very quickly, the muscle will use all the ATP. And because muscle stores some of this ATP as a creatine phosphate, and this creatine phosphate will then release those ATP. Creatine phosphate has this phosphate. So first phosphate will then, when muscle use the ATP, ATP will be converted. Let me write down here. Let me write down here. So pencil, if I can do that here. So when muscle use ATP, muscle use ATP. ATP is adenosine triphosphate. So it's 3. When muscle use the ATP, it will make it ATP to become ADP. D is 2 diphosphate plus a phosphate. So that's how muscle use the energy. Muscle will convert this triphosphate, the 3 phosphate, to become 2 phosphate. And that will release a lot of energy for muscle to use. And once muscle use all this ATP, then muscle accumulate a lot of ADP. Now, what can muscle do? Muscle will then, um, after using the ATP, muscle then will start to use, convert those, generate more ATP from immediate. They can generate those ATP from creatine phosphate. Here, creatine phosphate, because creatine phosphate is a creatine plus a phosphate. So you accumulate a lot of ADP, this phosphate can then add onto it to become a TP. It become triphosphate. And then muscle can then have additional triphosphate, adenosine triphosphate to use. So this is how muscle use energy. It needs ATP, very quickly run out all the ATP, then creatine phosphate will be the one to replenish those ATP by converting ADP to ATP. The muscle have more ATP to use. Then that will sustain for a while. Eventually, they will use all the ATP and all the creatine phosphate. Muscle will need more ATP. From there, muscle will go into the aerobic process or the metabolism um, in the mitochondria to generate more ATP. So mitochondria need to take in oxygen, take in glucose, and then uh, increase the generation of the ATP. And also the anaerobic metabolism, the cells will quickly burn the glucose without the oxygen, produce ATP. Yeah. So that's how our body do it. Um, and that's why when you start to exercise, before your blood get the oxygen, before your heart pump faster, stronger, your muscle will use ATP quickly, and then start to use creatine phosphate very quickly. And then also very quickly, you will start to increase your heart rate, increase your breathing to transport oxygen into your muscle, because now you will need oxygen to generate the ATP through aerobic exercise and also aerobic metabolism and anaerobic metabolism. So that's that. Muscle need those energy. All right. Close this one. All right, here we go. Let me clean it. I don't know if I can clean it. Erase. I hope I can erase. Oh, here we go. I have it here. All right, got it. So I can erase all this. All right, yes. I will erase all this. All right, that's done. So this is a table showing you the sequence of the energy usage by active muscle. Muscle will very quickly run out all the ATP in the muscle. And then creatine phosphate will be used as a secondary resource for muscle to use. But very quickly, you can see that it's up to like seconds to minutes, you will use all the creatine phosphate. And it won't take much time. Probably just a couple minutes, you will start to breathe faster and stronger during the exercise. And then your oxygen will provide into your muscle. And before your oxygen reach to your muscle will also start to use the glucose because your muscle also stores some glucose. And also fat. Fat is already in the blood circulation. Use those to generate ATP by anaerobic exercise or anaerobic metabolism. That is when your cells generate ATP without, and means none, no oxygen, anaerobic, no oxygen, doesn't require oxygen. But this is not very effective, and this will also generate some lactic acid. And so it's not the optimal way to generate the ATP from the fuel. But because in the very beginning of your exercise, your heart doesn't really pump that fast yet. So the oxygen supply is limited. Giving it minutes or so, then your new oxygen or more oxygen or glucose will supply the muscle. Then your muscle will start to use more of this aerobic metabolism to generate even more amount of the ATP for muscle to use. And so that will sustain for hours because now your mitochondria can keep on generating ATP. You're breathing much faster to get more oxygen to your muscle. Your heart also pump much faster, so it supply the oxygen for your muscle to use. So that's that. So this one showing you that muscle will use the ATP. All cells use ATP as a fuel. ATP is the currency in a cell. So all cells, when they need energy, they use ATP. That's just how human cells do their business. They will use ATP. When ATP is adenine, adenosine right here, adenosine triphosphate. Here, adenosine triphosphate. You have 1, 2, 3, 3 phosphate. And so by breaking it, you will generate a lot of energy release. And this energy release will allow your muscle to contrast. And then you ends up to have a lot of ATP. Yeah, so that's that. Another thing we also need to know is that when we burn ATP to use those energy, this energy is released through several forms. One form is to provide the chemical energy that your actin and the myosin can use it to move the thin filaments together. So that's one form. However, it also generates a lot of heat. So this one energy, when this chemical energy released, they also increase the temperature. And so that's something that we need to know is that when you contrast your muscle, when you burn, and then you will burn the ATP. When you burn that ATP, you not only use those ATP to activate your muscle or contrast your muscle, you also use this ATP to generate a lot of heat. And that's why that when your body exercise, you start to very quickly sweat a lot because you're gonna dissipate this heat from your body. Yeah, so up to 70% of the muscle energy, this energy, only 30% is going to generate force. The 70% is going to generate the heat. So our body muscle contraction generate a lot of heat. And that's another reason our body can keep on warm temperature. Yeah, because our body's muscle basically, whenever you move, you generate heat. For the muscle to contrast, muscle has to be activated by your voluntary control. This is skeletal muscle. It has to be driven by your intention. So your muscle, finger, arms, etc., your brain need to give that signal for muscle to work. And so this lead to the idea, which is about the nerve muscle interaction or nerve muscle control. Basically, our nerve can control our muscle. Yeah. And in our body, single neuron, single motor neuron, or single nerve can innervate into more than one muscle fiber. And so when you have a signal from your brain, it will send to the spinal cord. And in the spinal cord, it will then trigger sequence of motor neuron. Each neuron will then control multiple muscle. And so the least amount of the muscle that you can activate is from that single neuron. So one neuron is a boss. Each boss has a team member, or a team leader has a team member. So each team leader has many team members. We call this team a motor unit. So a motor unit is one motor neuron handles or activate or operate more than one muscle fibers. And so that's the motor neuron. In our body, some of this muscle area, we have a smaller motor neuron, meaning that one neuron can only operate a little bit amount of the muscle. And for that, you can have some more fine movement. However, because the muscle number is less, so the force is less. You don't have the force, but you have the fine movement, such as your finger or your hand. You can do very different fine movement because each motor neuron only innervate a small amount of the muscle. In contrast, our leg, each neuron innervate many muscle fibers. And so this motor unit is pretty big. This one provides you the force, but it doesn't provide you the fine movement. Yeah, so that is the trade-off, that you can have a large group of the team, large group of the member in your team. You don't have the fine movement, but you do have the force. Or you can have less amount of the member in your team. You have the uh, fine movement, but you don't have the force. So that's that. So here you what you need to know is that what is a motor unit? A motor unit is one motor neurons control multiple muscle fibers. Yeah, you're gonna see this in the quiz question to define to uh, to define what is a motor unit. You know? So when you need more, so each one is a team, right? So each team has this set amount of the muscle fiber. When your muscle need to generate more force, more action, then you will recruit more motor units. So we call this recruitment, but that is just very common English terminology. It's not, it's used in biology, but it's not very strange terminology for us to use. So more when you need more strength, you will recruit more motor unit. Yeah, so it's just simply like that. So here I'm showing you that one motor neuron, this purple one, operate one, two, several. You can see that here, several muscles. So that is one motor unit. So motor unit one, motor unit two, motor unit three. You can do fine movement by only activate some of those, or you can recruit everyone here by recruiting all these three motor units, and that will generate more force. Yeah. So that is about, with this short video, we understand the energy usage by the muscle, and also we start to understand that muscle is controlled by the neuron. Nerve is the boss of the muscle, and each nerve operate multiple muscle fibers. We call it a motor unit. And let's take a break, and we will continue the next one very soon. All right.